Charles came home at 2:47 a.m., exhausted, ready to collapse into bed. But when he opened his bedroom door, he froze. His children's nanny was asleep in his bed, with Sophia and Nathan curled up on either side of her. And the house was silent. Charles Williamson hadn't heard silence like this in years. His wife Diane died 4 years ago during childbirth. The twins, Sophia and Nathan, came into the world the same moment she left it. They were 4 now, and almost every night since they were old enough to understand loss, they woke up terrified, screaming, crying, convinced that sleep meant disappearing forever, just like their mother did. Charles had tried everything. 17 nannies, specialists, therapists, millions of dollars. Nothing worked. Then, 3 weeks ago, the preschool called. Both children had fallen asleep during class and woke up hysterical. The teacher couldn't calm them. Other parents wanted them removed. That night, Charles made one last desperate call. "I need someone who understands grief, real grief. I'll pay anything." The agency sent Rachel Baker, 29 years old, no fancy degree, just a woman who'd lost her husband and baby daughter 6 years ago, and somehow learned how to help broken children heal. When she arrived, she didn't bring protocols or plans. She just knelt down, looked at Sophia and Nathan, and said quietly, "I used to be scared to sleep too. After someone I loved went to heaven." Sophia whispered, "You were?" "Yes, but I learned something that helped." And for the first time in a long time, Charles saw something flicker in his children's eyes. Hope. What he didn't know was that 3 weeks later, everything would change. Before we continue, like this video, subscribe, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Because sometimes, when we've tried everything and feel completely alone, God sends exactly who we need, in the most unexpected way. The scream came at 2:34 a.m. Charles didn't need an alarm anymore. His body knew. 4 years of this, and he could feel it coming. That moment right before the terror started. "Daddy!" He was already moving. Down the hallway, barefoot, heart pounding. The children's room glowed with soft nightlights, stars on the ceiling, clouds on the walls, everything designed to bring peace. It never did. Both beds were empty. Sophia and Nathan huddled under the desk, clutching each other. Sophia's face streaked with tears, Nathan shaking so violently he couldn't speak. "She was here," Sophia whispered. "The shadow lady, she stood right there." Charles dropped to his knees, reaching for them. "There's nobody here, baby, I promise." "You always promise." Sophia's voice cracked. "But she keeps coming." Nathan finally spoke, his voice so small it barely made a sound. "Mommy promised too." And she left. The words shattered something inside Charles. 4 years old. They were 4 years old and already believed that promises meant nothing. He pulled them close, carried them to their beds, lay on the floor between them, holding their small hands in the darkness. "I'm right here. I won't leave." Sophia's grip tightened. "What if you close your eyes and disappear?" "I won't." "You don't know that." She was right. He didn't. And that terrified him more than anything. He stayed there for 2 hours, waiting, listening to their breathing slow, feeling their hands relax just enough that he thought, maybe, they'd finally fallen back asleep. He started to pull his hand away. Both children's eyes shot open. "Don't go!" So he stayed, on the floor, staring at the ceiling, watching the stars fade as morning light crept through the windows. His phone buzzed. A text from his CFO, board meeting at 9, critical, be there. Charles looked at his children, Sophia's hollow eyes, Nathan's trembling hands, the exhaustion carved into their small faces. He'd tried 17 nannies, specialists from the best hospitals, therapists, sleep consultants, millions of dollars spent. Nothing worked. And the worst part? He was starting to forget what his children's laughter sounded like. When the sun finally rose, Charles helped them downstairs, made breakfast they wouldn't eat, watched them sit at the table, too tired to even cry anymore. That's when his phone rang. The preschool. Charles's stomach dropped. It was only 7:45 a.m. School didn't even start until 8:30. "Mr. Williamson?" The director's voice was tight. "We need to talk about Sophia and Nathan, today, before you bring them in." Charles closed his eyes. What happened? "Yesterday. There was an incident. Other parents are concerned. We need to discuss whether—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Charles looked at his children, Sophia staring at nothing, Nathan's hands shaking around his juice cup, and he realized they were running out of time. Charles sat in the preschool director's office an hour later. Mrs. Palmer had always been kind. Today, her face looked different. "Yesterday during nap time, both children fell asleep at their tables." Charles leaned forward. "That's the first time they've slept during the day, and when Miss Caroline tried to wake them, they started screaming. Sophia wet herself. Nathan threw up. 16 other children saw it happen." Charles felt something break inside him. "Parents have called, Mr. Williamson. They're frightened. We love your children, but we're not equipped for this. They need help we can't provide." The drive home was silent. The children fell asleep in their car seats, finally asleep. Charles kept checking the mirror, waiting for the screaming to start. It didn't. When he pulled into the driveway, Nathan's eyes opened. "Daddy?" His voice was barely a whisper. Did Mommy die because she fell asleep? Charles nearly hit the brakes. What? She was sleeping and then she never woke up. So if we sleep, do we die too? Charles turned around, looked at his 4-year-old son who'd just connected sleep with death in his small, terrified mind. "No, buddy. Mommy had a sickness. Sleep didn't hurt her." Nathan's eyes said he didn't believe it. Sophia whispered, "Then why does the shadow lady come every time we close our eyes?" Charles had no answer. That night, after another battle, after lying on their floor for an hour, after they finally collapsed from exhaustion, Charles sat in his study at midnight. His hands trembled as he dialed. "Pemberton Agency. My name is Charles Williamson. I need help." His voice cracked. "I've tried 17 nannies, every specialist, every therapy. My children are 4 years old, and they think sleep is death. I need someone who understands grief, real grief, someone who's lost everything. I don't care about cost or credentials. I just need someone who can help them believe it's okay to close their eyes." Silence. Then, "Mr. Williamson, I have someone. Rachel Baker, 29, no degree. She lost her husband and infant daughter 6 years ago. Every child she's worked with has healed, but she's unconventional." "What does that mean?" "She doesn't follow traditional methods. Some families love her. Others don't understand her approach. But if she comes, it's because she believes God put her there for a reason." Charles closed his eyes. "When can she start?" If she says yes tomorrow afternoon, tell her yes, please." The next day, Charles stood at his window at 3 p.m. A 15-year-old Honda Civic pulled into his driveway beside his Tesla. The door opened. A young woman stepped out, jeans, simple shirt, canvas bag over her shoulder. Charles opened his front door, and Rachel Baker looked up at him with eyes that had seen the same kind of loss he carried every single day. Rachel stood at the door, smaller than Charles expected. No briefcase, no confidence, just a young woman with a canvas bag. "Mr. Williamson, I'm Rachel." Charles stepped aside. She walked in, looked around at the high ceilings, the lake view through the windows. He waited for the usual reaction. Instead, Rachel said quietly, "Beautiful home. But they don't need beautiful. They need safe." "They're upstairs. They won't come down when strangers come." Rachel set her bag down. "Can I go up?" "I'll show you. I'll find them." She smiled. "Sometimes it's better if they don't see you watching." Charles stayed at the bottom of the stairs, listening. Rachel's voice came soft through the door. "Hi. Are you Sophia and Nathan?" Silence. "I'm Rachel. I'm not here to make you do anything. I just wanted to meet you." Nothing. Can I tell you something? Charles moved closer, staying out of sight. I used to be scared at night too, Rachel said. After my baby went to heaven. Her name was Emma. She was 6 months old. Charles froze. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, or I'd dream about her and wake up and she'd be gone all over again. So I stopped sleeping. For a really long time. Sophia's small voice. You stopped sleeping too? Yeah, because it felt like losing her again every time. Silence. Nathan whispered, Did the shadow lady take her? Rachel took a breath. I don't know about a shadow lady, but something took her from me, and I was scared that if it could take her, maybe it could take everyone. That's why we can't sleep, Sophia said. I know, honey. But you sleep now? I do. It took time. But I learned something. What? That the people we love don't leave us just because we close our eyes. Footsteps. Then the door opened. Rachel stood there with both children holding her hands. Charles stared. Sophia and Nathan, who hadn't touched a stranger in months, were holding her hands like they'd known her their whole lives. Mr. Williamson, can we go outside? I think fresh air would help. As they walked past, Sophia looked back. Daddy, Rachel's baby went to heaven too, like Mommy. Charles watched them walk into the backyard. Rachel knelt in the grass between them, talking softly. For the first time in 4 years, his children looked calm. But what Charles didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Rachel didn't just come to help his children sleep. She came to break every rule he thought mattered. And it would start that very night. That evening, Charles watched from the kitchen doorway as Rachel made dinner with the children. She wasn't doing anything special, just letting them help stir pasta, taste the sauce, laugh when flour dusted Sophia's nose. Simple things, normal things, things Charles couldn't remember happening in his home for 4 years. Daddy, look. Nathan held up a spoon. I'm helping. Charles smiled, but something ached in his chest. How had this stranger walked into his house 6 hours ago and already made his children laugh? After dinner, Rachel glanced at the clock. Almost 7. Should we get ready for bed? Charles tensed. This was when everything usually fell apart, but Sophia just nodded. Okay. Rachel stood, took both children's hands. Let's go pick out pajamas. Charles followed them upstairs, staying back. He watched Rachel kneel beside their beds, talking softly while they changed. No rush, no forcing, just presence. All right, Rachel said. Who wants to hear a story? What kind of story? Sophia climbed into bed without being asked. A story about 2 brave kids who learned they were stronger than they thought. Nathan crawled into his bed too. Are we the kids? Rachel smiled. Maybe. Charles stood in the doorway, watching her sit on the floor between their beds. She pulled a small book from her bag, worn, pages soft from use. She began reading. Her voice was calm, gentle, the kind of voice that made you feel safe without trying. Sophia's eyes started to close. Charles held his breath. Nathan yawned. This couldn't be real. They never did this, never just settled. Rachel kept reading, her voice steady, unhurried, and slowly, impossibly, both children's breathing deepened. They were falling asleep. Charles felt tears burn his eyes. Rachel finished the story, set the book down, but she didn't get up. She pulled a thin blanket from her bag and spread it on the floor between the 2 beds. Charles stepped forward. Ms. Baker, you don't have to. Rachel looked up at him. Yes, I do. There's a guest room right down the hall. You'll be comfortable there. They won't be. Her voice was quiet but firm. They need to know I'm not leaving, so I'm staying right here all night. That's not necessary. Mr. Williamson. Rachel's eyes held his. How many nannies have you hired? 17. And how many of them stayed in this room all night? Charles was silent. None of them, right? They all went to their rooms, left the monitor on, checked in when the kids screamed. But they left. That's standard practice. Standard practice doesn't work for children who think being alone means dying. Rachel lay down on the floor, pulled the blanket over herself. "I'm staying. If you want me to leave in the morning, I understand. But tonight, I'm staying." Charles opened his mouth to argue. Then Sophia whispered in her sleep, "Don't go." And Rachel whispered back, "I'm here, sweetheart, right here." Charles backed out of the room, closed the door halfway, went to his study, sat in the dark. At 2:47 a.m., he checked the monitor on his phone. The children were still asleep. Rachel was still on the floor. And Charles realized he had no idea what he'd just let into his home. Charles woke at 6:30 a.m. He sat up in bed confused. Dawn light streamed through the windows. Then it hit him. He'd slept. Actually slept. For the first time in 4 years, he hadn't woken to screaming at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. His phone was silent, no alerts from the monitor. Charles grabbed it, hands shaking, pulled up the camera feed. The children's room was peaceful. Morning light glowed across 2 small beds. Sophia was curled under her blanket, breathing softly. Nathan's arm hung off the side of his mattress, fingers relaxed. And Rachel, still on the floor between them, blanket pulled to her chin, eyes closed. They'd slept, all of them, the entire night. Charles stood, walked down the hall in bare feet, pushed open the door carefully. The room smelled like lavender. A small diffuser sat on the dresser, something Rachel must have brought. Soft music played from a phone, so quiet he could barely hear it. Rachel's eyes opened. She looked up at him, put a finger to her lips. Carefully, she stood, stepped over her blanket, and slipped out of the room. Charles followed her downstairs. In the kitchen, she poured water into a glass, drank slowly. "They slept," Charles whispered. His voice broke. "They actually slept." Rachel nodded. "They woke up twice, around 1 and 3, but I just reminded them I was there. They went right back down." "How did you—" Charles couldn't finish. 17 nannies, 5 specialists. How did you do that in one night?" Rachel set down the glass. "I didn't do anything special, Mr. Williamson. I just stayed. That's all they needed. Someone who wouldn't leave. But the others tried. They tried from another room. They tried with monitors and schedules. But your children don't need monitoring. They need presence, real physical presence. They need to open their eyes in the dark and see someone there." Charles leaned against the counter. 4 years of agony, 4 years of exhaustion. And this woman had solved it by sleeping on the floor. "I don't know what to say," Rachel smiled gently. "You don't have to say anything. Just let me keep doing this. It'll take time, maybe weeks, but they'll heal, I promise. You're staying? If you'll have me." Charles felt something he hadn't felt in years, relief. Real, overwhelming relief. "Yes, please. Stay as long as they need you." Rachel nodded. "Then I should probably tell you something." "What?" "This is just the beginning. What I did last night, sleeping on their floor, that's the easy part." Charles frowned. "What do you mean?" Rachel looked toward the stairs, then back at him. "Your children don't just need someone to stay in their room, Mr. Williamson. They need to feel safe in yours." "I don't understand." Rachel's eyes held his. "You will. Soon." And before Charles could ask what she meant, footsteps sounded from upstairs, Sophia's voice still sleepy but calm. "Rachel?" Rachel smiled. "Duty calls." She headed upstairs, leaving Charles standing alone in the kitchen. And he had no idea that what she'd just said would change everything. 3 weeks passed. The children slept through most nights now. Not perfectly. They still woke sometimes, still called for Rachel. But the screaming had stopped. The terror had faded. Charles watched his children transform. Sophia laughed again. Nathan ate breakfast without coaxing. They played in the backyard, told stories, drew pictures. Rachel still slept on their floor every night. She never complained, never asked for anything. Just stayed. Charles tried to thank her once. She'd smiled and said, "You don't thank someone for doing what they're supposed to do." But Thursday afternoon, his CFO called. We have a crisis in Los Angeles. The client's threatening to pull the entire contract. You need to be there, tonight. Charles looked at Rachel, panic rising. I can't leave them. Rachel knelt beside Sophia and Nathan, who'd heard and were already clinging to their father. Daddy has to go help people with work, she said gently, just like doctors help sick people. But he's coming back, I promise. When? Nathan's voice trembled. Tomorrow. One sleep and he'll be home. Sophia looked at Rachel. Will you stay? I'm not going anywhere. Charles flew to Los Angeles, spent 18 hours in meetings, kept checking his phone, photos from Rachel, the children smiling, playing, eating lunch, a video, Nathan waving. Hi, Daddy, we miss you, but we're okay. Charles landed Friday at 2 a.m., exhausted, empty. He just wanted to collapse into bed. The house was dark when he walked in. Silent, beautiful, peaceful silence. He climbed the stairs, loosened his tie, pushed open his bedroom door, then froze. His bed, the king-sized bed where Diane used to sleep, where he'd spent 4 years alone, wasn't empty. Rachel lay in the center, peaceful, breathing softly. Sophia curled against her left side, small hand clutching Rachel's shirt. Nathan nestled against her right side, head on her shoulder. All three sleeping. The baby monitor on the nightstand read 2:47 a.m. Charles stood there, briefcase still in his hand, mouth open, unable to move. This was his bed, his private space, the room where his wife had died, where he'd grieved alone for 4 years, and this woman, this nanny, was sleeping there with his children, every professional boundary shattered, every rule broken. His first instinct was anger. She'd crossed a line. This wasn't appropriate. This was... Then he looked at his children's faces, completely at peace. No trembling, no fear, just rest. For the first time in their entire lives, they were sleeping in their father's room, in the space that smelled like him, in the bed that represented safety and presence. And they weren't alone. Charles backed out slowly, closed the door, walked downstairs in the dark, sat at the kitchen table, hands shaking. What had just happened? What was Rachel doing? And why, despite every logical reason to be furious, did seeing his children finally at peace make him want to weep? At 6:30 a.m., he heard footsteps on the stairs. Rachel appeared in the doorway, eyes widening when she saw him. Mr. Williamson, I can explain. Rachel stood in the doorway, still in yesterday's clothes. Her voice was quiet. I can explain. Charles set down his coffee cup. You slept in my bed. Yes. With my children. Yes. Silence filled the kitchen. Rachel stepped closer, sat down across from him. They needed to sleep where you sleep, where it smells like you, where they can feel you even when you're not there. You could have told me. Would you have said yes? Charles didn't answer. Your children have primal abandonment trauma, Rachel said softly. Their mother died the moment they were born, so to them, your absence equals death. When you left for Los Angeles, their bodies believed you might not come back. They needed to be in your space, to feel surrounded by you, but they also needed someone to stay with them, someone to prove they weren't alone. So you broke every professional boundary. Rachel met his eyes. Yes, I did. Why? She was quiet for a moment. Then, because 6 years ago I was 23 years old. I had a husband, a baby girl named Emma. She was 6 months old. Charles's chest tightened. We were driving home from dinner. A drunk driver ran a red light. My husband died instantly. Emma, her voice cracked. Emma died 3 days later in the hospital. I was the only one who survived. The kitchen went completely silent. For 2 years I wanted to die too, Rachel continued. I couldn't understand why I lived and they didn't. But then I started volunteering with children who'd lost parents. And I realized something. I couldn't save my daughter, but I could help other children feel safe again. So that's what I've done. I break rules, I cross lines, I do whatever it takes to give children what they actually need, not what protocols say they should have. She looked at him. Your children needed to sleep in your bed last night. They needed to feel you close, and they needed me to stay so they knew they weren't alone. So yes, I broke the rules. And if you want me to leave, I understand. But I need you to know, it worked. They slept. They felt safe. And that matters more than any boundary I crossed. Charles felt tears burning behind his eyes. You lost everything when you were 23. So did you. So did they. He looked down at his hands. 4 years of exhaustion. 4 years of failing his children. And this woman, who'd survived the unthinkable, had given them peace by doing the one thing no one else dared to do. Are you staying? His voice was barely a whisper. Because if you leave now, they'll break again, and He stopped. I don't think any of us can survive that. Rachel reached across the table. I'm staying, as long as you need me. What if they need you forever? She smiled gently. Then I guess I'm staying forever. Footsteps sounded from upstairs, small feet running. Rachel, Sophia's voice called out. Where are you? Rachel stood. I should go, but before she left, she turned back. Mr. Williamson? Your children don't need a nanny anymore. They need someone who's willing to love them the way their mother would have. And sometimes that means breaking every rule in the book. She disappeared upstairs, and Charles sat alone, realizing that everything he thought he knew about healing, about boundaries, about what his children truly needed, had just been completely shattered. 2 months passed. The house felt different now, lighter, like something heavy had finally lifted. Sophia and Nathan slept through most nights. Sometimes they woke and called for Rachel. She'd come, sit on the edge of their beds, whisper something gentle. They'd close their eyes again. But the terror was gone. Charles watched his children become children again. They laughed, played, told jokes. Sophia started drawing pictures of butterflies. Nathan learned to ride his bike without training wheels. And Rachel, she was just there. Always there, making breakfast, reading stories, sitting in the backyard while they chased each other through the grass. One evening, Charles came home early, found Rachel and the children in the kitchen, flour everywhere, attempting to make cookies. Daddy, look! Nathan held up a misshapen blob. I made a dinosaur, Sophia giggled. That's not a dinosaur, that's a blob. It's a blob dinosaur. Rachel laughed, really laughed, and something in Charles's chest shifted. He couldn't remember the last time he'd heard joy like this in his home. That night, after the children were asleep, Charles found Rachel sitting on the back patio. She looked up when he approached. They're getting better, she said softly. Because of you. No, because they finally feel safe. Charles sat beside her. When I hired you, I thought you'd just be another nanny, another failed attempt, Rachel smiled. And now? Now I don't know what you are. His voice was quiet. You're not just the nanny anymore. You're part of them, part of us. Rachel looked away. I should probably tell you something. What? I haven't slept in their room for 3 weeks now. I sleep in the guest room. They're ready for that. They know I'm close, but they don't need me on the floor anymore. Charles felt something catch in his throat. That's incredible. It is, but there's something else. What? Rachel turned to him. Last week at preschool, Sophia's teacher asked who takes care of her at home, and Sophia said, my mommy, Rachel, and my daddy. The words hit Charles like a wave. She called you mommy. I didn't tell her to. She just did. Charles was quiet for a long moment. Does that bother you? No. Rachel's voice was gentle. It breaks my heart and heals it at the same time. What do you mean? It breaks my heart because I know I'm not replacing their mother. I could never do that. But it heals it because... She paused. Because maybe this is why God let me survive when Emma didn't. So I could be here. For them. For you. Charles looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who'd walked into his life with nothing but a canvas bag and a broken heart. Who'd given his children peace when millions of dollars couldn't. Rachel, I need to ask you something. She met his eyes. Are you staying? Really staying? Because you've become so essential to them, to us. that if you left now, I'm not leaving. But what if... Rachel reached for his hand. Charles, I'm not leaving. Not tomorrow, not next month, not ever, unless you ask me to. The air between them felt different, charged with something neither of them had named yet. What if I don't want you to be the nanny anymore? Charles whispered. Rachel's breath caught. What do you mean? What if I want... A sound from inside, Nathan's voice, sleepy but calm. Rachel, I had a dream about dragons. Rachel stood quickly, squeezed Charles's hand. I should go. But as she walked away, she looked back, and Charles knew. Everything was about to change. 6 months after Rachel arrived, Charles took the family to the coast for the weekend. It was Sophia's idea. Can we go see the ocean, please? Nathan nodded eagerly. We've never been. So they packed the car and drove 3 hours to a small beach town, rented a house right on the sand. Saturday morning, Charles woke early, found Rachel already outside watching the waves. Couldn't sleep? He asked. She smiled. Just thinking. About what? About how different everything is now. Charles sat beside her. The children were still asleep inside. The ocean stretched out before them, endless and calm. I never thought I'd have this again, Rachel said softly. A family, people to care for, a reason to wake up happy. You gave that to us first. She shook her head. No. You let me in. You trusted me when I broke every rule. You could have fired me that morning when you found me in your bed with the kids, but you didn't. Because you were right. They needed it. Rachel turned to him. Charles, can I ask you something? Anything. What are we doing? His heart stopped. What do you mean? I'm not the nanny anymore. We both know that. But I don't know what I am. And I need to know. Because I can't keep pretending this is just a job. Charles took her hand. Rachel, you're not the nanny. You haven't been for months. He stopped, finding the words. You're the person who saved my children, who brought life back into this house, who taught all of us that it's okay to love again. Then what does that make me? I don't know, but I know what I wanted to make you. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Charles stood, pulled her up with him. Rachel Baker, I'm 45 years old. 4 years ago, I lost my wife and thought I'd spend the rest of my life alone, watching my children suffer from something I couldn't fix. Then, you walked in with your old car and your canvas bag, and you broke every rule and gave us peace. You didn't replace what was lost. You rebuilt what was broken. And his voice cracked, I love you, and my children love you, and I don't want you to be the nanny. I want you to be their mother, and I want you to be... Yes, Charles stopped. I haven't asked yet. Rachel smiled through tears. I don't need you to. The answer is yes. Inside, footsteps. Sophia and Nathan appeared at the door, sleepy and curious. Why are you crying? Sophia asked. Rachel knelt down, pulled them both close. Because I'm happy, sweetheart. Really, really happy. Nathan looked at Charles. Is Rachel staying forever now? Charles looked at Rachel, at the woman who'd given up everything to heal his broken family, who'd lost her own child and chosen to love his, who'd taught them all that God doesn't waste our pain. He uses it to help us heal others. Yes, buddy, she's staying forever. Sophia threw her arms around Rachel. So you're our real mommy now? Rachel kissed her forehead. If that's okay with you. It's perfect. And as they stood there, 4 broken people who'd found each other in the darkness, Charles realized something. Healing doesn't come from money or credentials or perfect plans. It comes from someone willing to stay, someone willing to break the rules when the rules don't serve love, someone willing to sleep on the floor, cross every boundary, and love broken children as if they were her own. 3 months later, they married in the backyard. Small ceremony, close friends. And when Rachel knelt before Sophia and Nathan and promised to love them forever, to tell them stories about their first mommy, to never leave them, both children whispered, "We love you, Mommy Rachel." That night, Charles stood in his bedroom doorway, the same spot where he'd stood 9 months ago, shocked and confused. Now Rachel sat on the bed waiting for him with a smile. "Come home," she whispered, and Charles finally did. The house that had been full of screaming for 4 years was now full of laughter. The children who couldn't sleep now slept peacefully every night. And the man who thought he'd lost everything learned that sometimes God takes the broken pieces of our lives and creates something more beautiful than we ever imagined. Not by erasing the pain, but by sending someone who understands it. Someone willing to stay in the dark until the light comes back. And it always does, if you let it.